Here we go. Exercise 6H. Listening. So we've got 6H. We're skipping 6I. We don't normally do that. And then 6J, 6K. So really, you've only got 2 exercises left before the end of the chapter. So next week, we've got Monday, Tuesday, so for J and K. Then we've got a double session for the Wednesday. I'm thinking of giving you the Wednesday as a revision session, and then you get your Friday session as revision. You got your weekend, so that's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 days of revision before you start on Monday. Okay, so Monday is the following. Now, like usual, I still have homework sheets for today, and they'll cover up to G. Okay, it'll cover up to G. So the homework sheets for today will cover up to G to see how you're doing. But here we go. Let's do 6H. Now, 6H afterwards. 6H and anything onwards now is really just putting every skill you've learned together. The biggest skill that you have to learn was B, C, and D. Get your head around that, that's it. Yeah, everything else is now applying. So let's have a look at this question here. It says determine the rule for the cubic function. Your job is to pick out, instead of sketching it now, they've given you the graph. Your job is to figure out what the equation should be. Right? So 6F and 6E was all about sketching. Well, now you're not sketching anymore. They sketched it for you. You have to now figure out what it should be. Now the only way to do that is, just like in quadratics, I told you to pay attention to the number of x-intercepts. Now if you look at the first one, how many x-intercepts do I have in the first one? 2. That's the most obvious. I've got one at -1, and I've got one at x equals 2. So what does that already tell me in my equation? What are my factors? The only way to get x-intercepts at -1 and 2, my factors have to be what? What should my factors be? So it's just from last lesson. To find x-intercepts, you know that your linear factors have to be what? What must they be?
X plus 1.
Yeah. Or not plus 2. For you to get x equals -1, it has to be x. Wait, let me write it over here. For you to have an x-intercept of -1, it has to be x plus 1. That's the only way for you to get x equals -1 as x-intercept. True? Whereas your second factor, the only way for you to get x equals 2, your factor has to be what? X minus 2. But remember, when I taught you in the last lesson, I taught you to read the equation. There's a repeated factor here. See, it does that turning point. Now, if it does a turning point, that means the square has to be on the x minus 2. This is 6F, by the way. So you can say, that's already something that you can already say. You can say, that will cross through -1, that will cross through 2. Square tells me it's a repeated factor. Will, stop talking. Now we got repeated factor at x minus 2. We've got x plus 1. Now notice I've got an A. You always have an A, because what you don't know is how thin or wide it is. That's what the A is for. That's all you're really doing. It's the same thing as your quadratics. You're always trying to find A. That was part of your SAC. I also gave to you. It was the same thing last term to find A. Now, how do I find A? They always give you one piece of information to figure it out. Not the gradient? It gives you coordinate. Oh, sorry, you didn't. I thought you said.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Okay. Now the reason why we don't sub 2, 0 is because if you sub 2 in, it just gets you 0. If you sub in 1, -1, it gets you 0 as well. The coordinate that they give you, they always give you an extra coordinate because that gives you an x and a y coordinate for you to solve. So you see in this question here, how do you solve it? You know that this is x when x is 3. Y is 2, and that's all I asked you to do in your SAC last term. It was the same thing. All you had to do was sub in x equals 3 and y equals 2. Now you can solve that. This is 2 equals to a multiplied to 3 plus 1, which is 4. 3 minus 2 is 1 squared. And now you get 4a equals 2. Therefore, a has to equal to what? Half. So my equation has to be half times x plus 1 times x minus 2 squared. Okay? This is all I'm doing. All I'm doing is I'm just looking at the number of x-intercepts. Okay? You find the number of x-intercepts, that tells you how many brackets you need. Let's have a look at the next one. Look at this shape here. Is this a positive graph or is it a negative graph? Negative. But the other thing you also have to notice as well. Now, cubic graphs. Shh. Ben. Thank you. With cubic graphs, there are two types of graphs that you can get. Sydney, talking and get out of my class. You got two types of shapes for cubics. You can either have an inflection point form. So remember, you learnt this shape with an inflection point, or you have a cubic graph that cuts through. Now, if you look at the first one, that was a second form. That tells you how many number of x-intercepts you have. Now, if you look at that B graph, you can already tell this is a negative graph of the first form. This is exercise 6E. Okay? Yeah, this is the one with the x cubed. Okay, so if you remember, when I told you 6E, this was x cubed, whereas in 6F, this one was the one with the 3 brackets. So x minus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3. Yeah? That's the difference between the two. So this second one will tell you how many, the number of brackets tells you the number of x-intercepts. This one will tell you there's only one intercept. So if you have a look at this shape here, this is an inflection point form, but where's your inflection point? It's moved to the left by 1, up by 2. So this is exercise 6E. If you've done 6E, you can read it and say the equation has to be a negative graph, moves to the left by 1, so it has to be x plus 1, it's cubed, and it goes up by 2. Okay, so remember I taught you that we had to read the inflection point. In 6E, we read this, we said that goes left by 1, up by 2, negative graph. So left by 1, up by 2, negative graph. Okay? What am I missing in this one though? A. A. You always need A because you don't know how thin it is. So, I'm going to put in the negative A because I know it has to be a negative graph. How do I find A again? So we don't try. You don't. Sub in the point. 1, negative 2. So you got 1, negative 2 here, sub in x, sub in y. It's the same thing as you did over here. Sub in x, sub in y. That's as simple as it is, and that's how I did in the SAC for quadratics. It's exactly how I'm going to do the SAC for this one too. It's the same drill. You just have A, read the number of x-intercepts. No different from quadratics. If you didn't pick it up last term for quadratics, this is your second go to pick it up for cubics. This is the same techniques. That's why we'll go through it faster this time. Okay? That's the same drill. Right? All right. Other than that, you'll find that all the questions are exactly the same as quadratics. It's the same thing. They give you an equation. You got the equation. They say find A. So again, how do you find A? They have to give you a point. There's no way you can solve for it unless they give you an x and a y point. They have 1, 12. All you have to do is sub in x equals 4, y equals 12, solve for A. Now you can all do that in your calculator now too. Yeah, you can sub it in and say solve for A. So all of these questions here are all easy. That's 6H. That's how simple it is. See, the biggest skill that you had to learn was 6B, 6C, 6D. Get your head around those. And 6E was just your turning points and everything. Everything else was easy. It's just 6B, 6C, 6D. My homework sheets for this weekend is the same thing. I'm going to get you to practice those skills again. It's just going to get your head around that. Okay? But having said that, just in case you're still not familiar with a calculator, especially for your SAC, I'm going to go on the previous example. I'm going to get you to do this with a CAS. Here we go. If you have your CAS, take this out. I want you to start reading the notations that are given here. Here we go. How do I do this problem? First thing, what do you have to do when you get a problem like this? What do you have to do? On a calculator, what do you have to do on your calculator? What do you have to do? You do sub them in, but define. Thank you, Trent. That's what I'm looking for. Everything you do, I want you to define. Makes it easier. So here we go. How do you define? Menu. 1, 1. Define. F of x, so f bracket x equals to a times x cubed. Now make sure you have the times in between the two letters, please. A and x. If you don't do that, the calculator doesn't know the difference between a and x. You have to put in the times. B times x squared plus C times X plus D. Do that for me. I want you to define. I want to show you how you can solve without doing it all simultaneously by hand. It takes too long. That's a lot. You're going to calculator. Okay? So define AX cubed. Whoops. That's what I want you to define. That's the first thing I want you to do. Every application question.
This like is A or B?
Huh?
Like just said is B.
Oh yeah, no. All right, here we go. Now, going back to exercise 6A, what does this mean again? When you say f of 1 equals 0, what does that mean again? What does this mean? It's all about language. It's the first exercise you've done for chapter 6. Yes, Seb?
Sub 1 in for X, the result equals 0.
Yeah. All this means is if you sub x equals 1, y equals 0. That's all it's saying. If you just sub 1 in, if you sub 1 in, sub 1 in, sub 1 in, this answer is equal to 0. That's all it means. Nothing tricky. Yeah, so what that means is you can get your first equation as 0 equals to a times 1 cubed plus b times 1 squared plus c times 1 plus d. Now what you don't want to do is do this. You don't want to type that in your calculator. See how long that takes? This is if you were to do it by hand. So that was the first point. You get your second equation by doing the same thing. You sub in x equals 2, y equals negative 7. That takes too long to do. Now you can do it all by hand if you want. That's going to take ages. What I'm trying to teach you to do is how to do it with a calculator. So how do you do this on a calculator? Instead of typing this entire equation, don't do that. Do this. The reason why you define is because now you're trying to solve. So I want you to go to menu, algebra, and then solve algebra. Menu, algebra. Now, you've got 4 equations. How do you know it's 4? Because you've got 4 points. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 4 different equations, 4 different points, right? So what I want you to do is go to this little box over here. So there's a book next to the 9. If you click on that, you can choose this third last box up here, top right. Choose that box, and you get to choose the number of equations you want to put in. Now, I don't want to put 3. I want 4, okay? If you do that, you can get 4 spaces. Now, this is what I'm trying to show you. Instead of typing that equation, what you could have done is this what you can do. F of 1 equals 0. Go down. Let's do another one. The other one was, if you sub in 2, it equals to negative 7. So you type in f of negative 2 equals 7. Go down again. What's your next coordinate? F of 4 equals 27. So f of 4. Am I going too fast? No? Next one, the coordinate is f of 5 equals to 80. Okay, now I'm gonna wait for you until you type all of this down, yeah?
I want to see if this works. If this works.
Alright, hopefully you got the first line. Now, you see, once you do this, what are you trying to solve for? Your goal was to find A, B, C, and D. So here, move your cursor all the way to the right so that you get this big cursor and you say A, B, comma, C, comma, D, because you're telling it what to solve for. You're saying, I want you to do simultaneous these 4 equations, and I want you to solve for A, B, C, and D. So you can type it all in one line. Okay, sorry? You got syntax error? No? What am I missing?
I think
That doesn't make sense. Why'd that happen? Is that a dot? Sorry, I don't know why I had a dot there. Oh, there we go. Maybe I forgot to tell you to put a comma here. You're gonna have to wait. Okay. Wait. Let me just do it again. Alright, there we go. So, in order to get your answers, make sure you have the comma because I didn't put the comma in. If you have the comma A, it's just telling me false. I know why. Did you put in the times? See, up here I said they can't tell the difference between the letters. Did you put a times in between each letter? They can't tell the difference between A and X, so you got to make sure it's A times X, B times X squared, C times X. Otherwise, they can't solve it. And then comma A, comma B, comma C, comma D. It's just that AX is
like he got them right.
Okay? Wait.